Okay, so now we're on to 15b, and in describing the impact of industrialization and urbanization, we want to look at some of the most prevalent ideas or theorists of the time, and that's Adam Smith and Karl Marx. Both of them were very intelligent scholars when it came to politics and economics. So let's kind of jump in and look at those two guys, all right? Have set the groundwork. Industrialization impacted people at every level. It wasn't just the poor, the middle class, or the upper class. It was rulers, it was business owners, it was pretty much anybody that lived was impacted by industrialization in some way, shape, or form, even the small-time farmer, okay? People, leaders, politicians, they all had to listen to scholars and theorists of the time, well, because they were the experts, and they were the ones who they could go to and listen to what they had to say because they'd been studying it for years. And they had an idea of what was going on and why things were happening the way they were and what was going to happen next in society. All right, so let's kind of look at Adam Smith, right-hand corner of your screen. You can Google Adam Smith and you can find tons of pictures of him. But let's kind of start with who he was. He lived in Scotland. He was born in Scotland in about 1723, and he lived till about 1790. Okay, so again, he's an economist. When you get to economics your senior year, you'll talk about him then too. But during his time, what he could see was happening around the world were these countries that were sailing to the New World, and their economies were based on what's called mercantilism. This idea that a country's power depended on how much gold and silver it could accumulate. So countries would go to these new worlds and they would pull all these raw materials that were valuable. They'd bring them back. They'd make something. They'd sell it and make a ton of money off of it. But gold and silver was what determined how much power a country had. Okay? So Adam Smith writes a book called The Wealth of Nations. And in his book, and if you ever get a chance, it really is a good book, he discusses why nations have or do not have wealth, how they are able to acquire wealth, how they lose wealth. He kind of talks about all the ins and outs of that process. But Adam Smith, in his book, what's called the basic principles of laissez-faire. Again, what's in pink or purple? Those are your vocabulary terms. So you need to pay special attention to that and look and see what's on these PowerPoints, and you have to write your definitions. You can also go to the Quizlets, okay? But Adam Smith was a capitalist. He understood and supported and promoted capitalism. And he said that laissez-faire economics was something that had to be in place in order for countries to succeed economically, okay? So the idea of laissez-faire economics means the government should deregulate the economy. The government shouldn't have its hands in business. It should stay out of it. It should let these companies grow and progress, buy up other companies or fail, hire their workers, sell their products. And that with the government staying out of business in the economy, that between your consumers and your businesses, consumers would demand, certain quality products. Businesses would provide that. Businesses would sell for certain prices, but between your businesses and your consumers, they would work out a happy medium on what products would be bought and sold and for how much. He also said that people are always going to work in their own self-interest, that people are very selfish. And eventually, with everybody working in their own self-interest, this would kind of provide a foundation of what the collective good was, what the general public needed, okay? Now, if you start talking about capitalism itself, and that's one of your terms that's not highlighted, but it is down here. Capitalism can be a good thing. Capitalism can provide consumers with a wide variety of products at varying prices. People can get pretty much whatever they need and want. They've got the money to do it. And businesses can earn profits, and they can sell whatever they want that the market will buy. And with capitalism it's like a free market. The factors of production, businesses, everything's owned by private companies. Your government doesn't own everything. All individual people own this stuff. Okay? But why can capitalism be a bad thing? Well, just think about it. If businesses are in it for the profit and individuals are only out for themselves, okay, one thing that's going to happen is monopolies will develop where only one company sells that product or service. Well, then they can jack up the prices to whatever they want, and the consumers will have to pay it because they're the only place they can get it. Economic depressions where lots of people are out of work and don't have money, and businesses are failing left and right, and the economy is kind of tanking. And we saw that earlier in the 2000s. We also saw it in the 1930s. So that's, something to consider. All right, so let's move on. And we're going to look at the next person, Karl Marx. He's kind of easy to remember. His face is pretty unique. Okay, Karl Marx was from Germany. And Karl Marx lived after Adam Smith. Okay, so he kind of had an idea of what capitalism was. He saw it in other countries. And he saw how much of a bad thing capitalism could be and what it could create. That it would create these classes in society. You're really wealthy, you're middle class, and you're lower classes. Okay? So he lived from 1818 to 1883. Remember, he's one of your words. Communism is too, okay? He wrote a book called The Communist Manifesto. Yes, he was in support or in favor of communism. He saw socialism could develop out of democracy, and then communism would develop out of socialism. So we'll have questions in class and you can ask those, okay? But he wanted a revolution. He wanted people to take up arms and to fight back against those that would oppress them, and the overly wealthy in society to take back what belonged to them, okay? He saw that any economic inequality was something that we see throughout history, and we've talked about it. We've talked about it during the time of ancient river valley civilizations, where you had your rulers and then you had your peasants. We've talked about the social pyramids, right? The social structures where, those with more are up closer to the top and those with less go closer to the bottom, okay? He called them the proletariats and the bourgeoisie, okay? The proletariat is your common man, your working class, your poor, and then the bourgeoisie is your middle or upper classes. Your proletariats are the have-nots and your bourgeoisie are the haves. They have stuff, they don't, okay? Karl Marx wanted to create a communist utopia, an ideal society where the worker sees the means of production, the government is overthrown, the new government is based on equality for everybody. Just follow me here. That means then that we're going to move to a period where, the workers would become the government and everybody would get an equal share of everything. Nobody would want for anything. I want you to think about that for just a minute. What could be a positive or a negative about communism where the government controls and owns everything? The businesses, the products, the raw materials. What could be good about that and what could be bad?